Hallo Deutschlerner! In case you don't follow me on social media, I recently went to Germany and stayed for 2 full weeks with a host family as part of my school's gap exchange. While I was there, I took some notes on some phrases that I heard over and over again that don't really make much sense if you look at them on face value. These kinds of phrases are called idiomatic expressions. They are called this because the word idiom comes from the Greek word idioma, which means peculiar phrasing. And here I thought it was just referencing how you might feel like an idiot if you don't understand the meaning of them and you just have to sit there with that dumb, awkward, blank stare on your face, smiling and nodding like, oh yeah, I definitely understand you. Well, to avoid all of that, I'm going to be teaching you these idioms that I heard all of the time while in Germany this summer. We'll start with the one that I heard most often, weiß der Gaia. You may already be aware that weiß can have two meanings. If it's a verb, it means to know. If it's an adjective, it means white. In this case, we mean the verb to know. And a Gaia is a vulture. This phrase literally means knows the vulture. You could also phrase it as the vulture knows. In conversation, it would make the most sense to add the word only to make it so that it has the same meaning in German. Only the vulture knows. The closest English equivalent that I can think of is heaven only knows, or God only knows, or Lord only knows. So how do we use this phrase? Basically, you use it when you don't care who actually knows the information, because why would you care what the vulture knows? Hey, wo ist dein kleiner Bruder? Hey, where's your little brother? Weiß der Gaia, dieser Typ ist immer in Bewegung. Lord only knows, that dude is always on the move. Warum hat sie so viel Gepäck? Why does she have so much luggage? Sie bringt ihr ganzes Zuhause mit. Sie hat alle Kleidung, Schuhe und weiß der Geier was noch. She's bringing her entire home with her. She has all of her clothes, shoes, and God only knows what else. Now, if you're wondering like I was where this wonderful phrase came from, it's actually kind of the opposite of the English phrase. While we tend to say heaven or God is the only one that knows in English, the German phrase used to reference the devil. The devil only knows. But since it was considered in poor taste to mention the devil by name, people substituted out his friend the vulture. Another random tidbit to go along with this phrase is there's also the phrase hol mich doch der Gaia, which is again the opposite of what we say in English. We might say something like, Jesus, take me now, basically saying, get me out of this situation, I can't take it anymore. It's used to say something like, darn it. Ich werde diese Prüfung nicht bestehen. Ich habe versucht, alles zu lernen, aber mein Kopf ist immer noch leer. Hol mich doch der Gaia. I'm not gonna pass this test. I've tried everything to learn it, but my brain is still empty. Jesus, take me now. The next phrase on my list was actually only mentioned in one conversation that I had while in Germany, but it was such a cool phrase that I had to add it to the list. The phrase is, fuchs dich mal rein. A fuchs is of course a fox, but in this phrase it's kind of being used as a verb. It literally says, fox yourself in there. It's used to say that someone is diving right in or immersing themselves in a particular topic or subject matter, usually with the aim of gaining deep understanding or becoming proficient in it. For example, wenn du Deutsch lernen willst, musst du dich reinfuchsen. If you want to learn German, you have to dive right in. Wie kann man seine PC-Kenntnisse erweitern? Fuchs dich mal rein. Je mehr du an einem Computer arbeitest und spielst, desto mehr kannst du lernen. How can one expand their computer knowledge? Dive right in. The more you work and play at the computer, the more you will learn. Next up, we have aus dem Ärmel schütteln. This phrase literally translates as to shake out of the sleeve. In English, we have the phrase off the cuff, which has a similar meaning as the cuff is the end of a sleeve. This phrase is basically used to say that someone came up with something or did something so easily that it seemed like a magic trick. This is where both the English and German versions come from. Magicians will often do tricks that seem like things appear out of thin air, which is usually done by keeping something up their sleeve. While in English we focused on the end of the sleeve, the cuff, in German they focus on the action of shaking whatever it was out of the sleeve. It is also the reason for the English phrase nothing up my sleeve because many magicians would try to prove that they aren't using any of the cliché tricks of hiding something up their sleeve, and so they would say, I have nothing up my sleeve. This led to the wider use of the phrase meaning that someone is not hiding anything or isn't up to something. In German they say etwas in der Hinterhand haben, which is having something behind their hand. Anyway, back to aus dem Ärmel schütteln. Let's see some examples of how you might use this in conversation. Ich habe keinen Plan für morgen in der Schule geschrieben. Es ist sowieso egal. Ich kann einfach etwas aus dem Ärmel schütteln. I haven't written a plan for school tomorrow. It probably doesn't matter. I can always just pull something out of my sleeve. Was Ryan Reynolds so lustig macht, ist seine Fähigkeit, lustige Sprüche aus dem Ärmel zu schütteln. What makes Ryan Reynolds so funny is his ability to come up with funny sayings off the cuff. Next up we have das A und O sein. This comes from the Bible when it says that God is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. This phrase is used when something is the key to success or the essential information or facts. All that is important or is significant, that is this A und O. The best English translation I could come up with is the be-all, end-all. It is everything. Without it, there is nothing. Let's see das A und O in action. Ohne Englisch kann man gar nicht anfangen. Bei uns ist Englisch das A und O. Without English, you can't do anything. For us, it's the be-all, end-all. Beim Räuchern ist die Temperatur das A und O. Man muss langsam und bei einer niedrigen Temperatur kochen. While smoking, the temperature is the be-all, end-all. You have to cook slowly and at a low temperature. Another phrase that I often heard in Germany is nicht ohne sein. This is used in similar situations to das A und O sein. It means that whatever it is should not be underestimated or devalued. Ich muss mich auf die Matheprüfung vorbereiten. Ich habe Herrn Weber. Seine Prüfungen sind nicht ohne. I have to prepare myself for the math test. I have Mr. Weber. His tests are legit. Wie fandest du den Film gestern Abend? What did you think of the film last night? Es war spannend. Die Wendungen in der Handlung waren nicht ohne. It was very exciting. The twists in the storyline were, well, wow. Like, whoa. The last phrase on my list for today just means that you don't care. It might be a familiar one to you, but I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on it. The phrase das ist mir Wurst literally means that is sausage to me. In English, we would probably say, it's whatever. The reason I left this one on my list, even though it's been covered by literally every blog that has a post about German idioms, is because I was in Baden-Württemberg, where Swabian is the main dialect. This dialect is marked by several features, but the one that stood out the most is the use of the sh sound, where other dialects would just simply say s. So erst becomes erscht, and musst becomes muscht, and Wurst becomes Wurscht. So the phrase as I heard it in Baden-Württemberg was, das ist mir Wurst. To be fair, even non-Swabian speakers say it as Wurscht in this phrase. If you want me to make a video about my observations about the Swabian dialect, leave a comment down below. In the meantime, let's get to some examples. Was wollen wir zu Abend essen? What do we want for dinner? Das ist mir Wurst. I don't care. Dein Schuh ist offen. Your shoe is untied. Das ist mir Wurst. Ich werde sie bald ausziehen. I don't care. I'm going to take them off soon. What idiomatic expressions have you heard in German? Which ones are your favorites? Leave them in the comments down below. If you like this video about German idioms, I've got dozens more like this online. All of them are aimed at one thing, helping you ace your next German exam. These lessons range from free, school-related German materials that'll make you look like you absorbed an entire textbook overnight, to my Deutschlerner Club, which is an online school that provides all of the necessary lessons and resources on the A1 and A2 levels, in a never-to-be-bored content format. Best of all, it costs 1,000,000 times less than your average German tutor or class. Click here or the link down below to learn more about my movement to change how people learn German online.